Pyrrha Nikos, known as the Invincible Girl, a title earned through many victories at tournaments before even attending Beacon Academy. This due to her immense skill in combat, but also due to her subtle use of her semblance, of polarity, the ability to control magnetism. With many opponents fighting with metal weapons, she can make subtle changes to their momentum and make it seem as though she is just untouchable in combat. But her semblance is not without its limitations. She does not have absolute control over magnetism, and these subtle limitations are seen throughout the RWBY series, though in the instances where she uses her semblance, it may not be quite clear. So in this video, I'll be giving my breakdown of Pyrrha's semblance, the limitations with it, and how I think it has been used in each of the scenes that has taken place throughout RWBY. Now, this is my own personal opinion, others are free to disagree, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. We were first introduced to Pyrrha's semblance of polarity at the end of Volume 1 when she was able to precisely manipulate Jean's shield, allowing him to block the Ursa's attack and win that fight. And it was further expanded upon in Volume 2 when she fought against Mercury Black. The animators put emphasis on Pyrrha changing the grip that she had on her sword to be able to block Mercury's kick with her hand. Now, it was quite obvious before Pyrrha made that block that Mercury's feet, or his boots, had metal in them, but for Pyrrha to be able to make those slight adjustments, so it made it seem as though Mercury's attack just missed, she had to come in contact with it, had to strike it with her hand rather than just blocking with her shield or her weapon. The exact reasoning Pyrrha does this is unknown, whether it's to pulse her aura through a metallic object, thus tagging it with her aura, allowing her to manipulate it, or by pulsing her aura, it allows her to understand the magnetic properties of the metallic object she is in contact with, thus allowing her to precisely manipulate it as well. We're not really sure, but this still has to be done, as was emphasized in the episode. And this was further emphasized by, at the end of the episode, Mercury stating that she was only able to manipulate his boots after making contact with them. This was put in intentionally by the animators and the writers of the show to give an expansion on Pyrrha's semblance. So going back to the first introduction of Pyrrha's semblance into the show, when she manipulated Jean's shield, well, how exactly could that have been done? Well, there are multiple answers to this. Jean, being Pyrrha's teammate for some time, Pyrrha would have had ample opportunity to come in contact with Jean's shield and thus easily understand its magnetic properties, be able to precisely manipulate it, etc. Not only that, when Pyrrha activated Jean's aura, she pulsed her aura through all of the magnetic properties, or the magnetic items on Jean's person, his sword, his shield, his armor, etc. So with that being the case, it's no surprise that Pyrrha would be able to have her semblance affect the shield in a precise way. And then when it comes to the fight against Mercury Black, that was where her semblance was expanded upon in greater detail, etc. There's also the fight at the beginning of Volume 2, and this is one where Pyrrha is able to use her semblance in a non-precise way. There are two instances in the RWBY series where she can use, or has demonstrated the use of, magnetic pulses, and these are not what I consider precise movement. One in the food fight where she pulsed her magnetism through the ground, magnetizing all the magnetic cans around herself and then sending them forward in a single direction. Yes, they were targeted at Blake, but they were still in a single direction. Not only that, this food fight I think was maybe emphasized a little bit because RWBY's semblance was able to make a slipstream strong enough to take everything that was in the cafeteria and her opponents along with it and slam them into a wall. She's never demonstrated the ability to move that fast since then. She's able to move real fast, but she's never created a slipstream since then, so I question the physics of that fight in some cases. But still, there is an explanation for Pyrrha's use of pulsing magnetism through the ground, magnetizing the cans, etc. And then again in the fight against Penny. When Penny made all of those blades, Pyrrha pulsed her magnetism. It was an indiscriminate pulse, she had no control over it, hence why there was enough force in it to rip Penny to shreds. And this further demonstrates that there's actually a distance limit to Pyrrha's ability to manipulate magnetic objects. She sent out this indiscriminate magnetic pulse, pushing back all of the blades that Penny shot forward, yet not Penny herself, who we know, made of metal, is also metallic. There was a scene intentionally put into RWBY where she had a little incident with a magnet being stuck to her head, and yet Penny was not pushed back, but the blades were, and thus the force of that was able to rip Penny apart. So Pyrrha can send out an indiscriminate wave or manipulate things precisely if she is able to make contact with them. And she hadn't made contact with all of Penny's blades, so last-ditch effort was to do that magnetic pulse, which is probably pretty aura draining and a last resort for Pyrrha. That's why she doesn't use it, etc., etc. And then the last time in which Pyrrha used her semblance of polarity is in her final fight against Cinder. She used this a couple times, and there is an explanation to the instances in which she used it. She manipulated first Ozpin's desk. After the room was destroyed, that is when she started relying on her semblance. She's used her semblance multiple times in the past to manipulate her weapons, Milo and Akoo, and those are something she's in contact with all the time, understands the magnetic properties of very well, and is able to draw them to herself, etc. That's no issue. But when it comes to manipulating Ozpin's desk, well, it was never explicitly shown on screen, but Pyrrha was called to Ozpin's office when Ozpin told her about all of the maidens and everything like that. She had the opportunity to touch Ozpin's desk at that point, similarly with the elevator previously in that same episode, you know, just touching the elevator button or the elevator walls at the couple times that she's been in that elevator, easily explained there. And then it comes to the gears. Well, the gears, if we rewatch the episode, when Pyrrha, or the room was destroyed by the Wyvern and Pyrrha was looking around looking for something to throw, those metal gears were scattered across the room. And yet, as Pyrrha was looking for something to throw at Cinder, using her semblance, Ozpin's desk was the only thing that she could focus on before she could actually manipulate the gears. After throwing Ozpin's desk at Cinder as more of a distraction and dodging Cinder's attacks, she started rolling around the room. And although it's never directly shown on screen, and maybe due to animating errors or whatever, she was likely rolling around and touching the gears around the room. And thus, after throwing her shield at Cinder, taking only a couple seconds to go around and pulse her aura through these magnetic objects, was able to manipulate the gears. And there were some gears that she just didn't manipulate. Whether this was a limit to her semblance, that she just couldn't pick up that much mass with her semblance, etc., this is still the case, as Pyrrha was able to precisely manipulate the gears, able to use one at a time to swipe Cinder and take her feet out from under her, slam her into the ground, and then do the ultimate attack of slamming all of the gears into Cinder. So there is an explanation as to why Pyrrha was able to manipulate all of these objects with precision, because she was able to make contact with them. If she didn't make contact with them, then all she would have is the magnetic pulses, and that wouldn't really work. Also in this fight, if Pyrrha could have manipulated the gears in the first place, why did she have to focus on Ozpin's desk? She could have just started flinging gears at Cinder, or even brought the gears down from the ceiling at the beginning of the fight and surprised Cinder that way. Because Cinder, at that point, knowing Pyrrha's semblance, still would have been surprised by gears just coming down from the ceiling. But still, those instances never happened, whether that was animation choice or etc., it's still unknown. On top of that, Pyrrha, for her to be able to use her semblance, she has to be open-handed. She cannot use her semblance on anything that's a distance away from her if she has anything else in her hand. The only time she's ever manipulated anything that she's had in her hand was Milo and Akoo in that fight against Penny, when she warped her weapons briefly with her semblance. Every other time, she's been open-palmed, and she has to be to manipulate anything else, otherwise it would interfere with the magnetic pulses she sends out, etc. So hopefully this all makes sense. This is my thinking on how Pyrrha's semblance works, because otherwise there would be no point in that specific episode where Pyrrha fought against Mercury, and it was explicitly stated that for Pyrrha to control anything however she wants to, she has to make contact with it first. It was intentionally put in by the creators of the show to give further depth to Pyrrha's semblance. She is extremely strong, don't get me wrong. The ability to pulse magnetism, simply coming in contact with a magnetic object, being able to manipulate it however she likes, is a very strong semblance. But there are limitations to it to not make her completely broken of a character. Previously, this week, in a video I made about Glinda Goodwitch, I made the comment about Glinda having the most powerful semblance in the RWBY series because she could just fling any opponent across the stadium, or any opponent that she comes up against, with her telekinesis. But it was pointed out to me in the comments below that, well, she probably can't manipulate people who have their aura active. And when I thought about it, yeah, that's exactly the case. Otherwise, in the very first episode, when Glinda went up against Cinder, she could have just used her semblance and yeeted Cinder out of the airship. But that didn't actually happen. So Glinda, even having a powerful a semblance as she has its limitations. So does Pyrrha's, as she can only manipulate with precision when she has made contact with an opponent's weapon or an object that has magnetic properties, etc. But you can still use magnetic pulses, though it's likely more aura draining, a last resort, etc. So let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments below. Hopefully all of my ramblings about Pyrrha's semblance make sense. There is one time when Pyrrha used her semblance, or a couple times I guess that I did leave out, and that was when she manipulated Jean's armor, but you know, she's made contact with Jean's armor in the initial episode where she activated Jean's aura, so that's easily explained. But overall, let me know your thoughts on Pyrrha's semblance. Do you agree with my thinking of how Pyrrha's semblance works, or do you have your own ideas? I would love to hear your ideas and counter arguments in the comments below, because honestly, this is really fun to look at the intricacies of semblances, even if things aren't explicitly shown on screen. Like the fight between Pyrrha and Cinder, where it seems very likely, to me at least, that Pyrrha had to go around and touch each of the gears before she was able to manipulate them. Otherwise, what would be the point of focusing on Ozpin's desk? But I'm starting to repeat myself now. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Are there any other semblance breakdown videos you'd like me to do? I have a couple others that I have planned, but I would love to hear your thoughts, as there are many semblances in the RWBY series. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe if you want to see some more RWBY content, RWBY theories, fights to take place in the Phoenix Festival tournament. Join the Guild of the Eternal Flame, join our Discord server if you feel like it, and tweet me at Phoenix Knight 7. And I'll see you guys in the next video.